A year ago, I was wearing entirely fast fashion. I was shopping at H&M, Old Navy, pretty much any store you could find in an outlet mall. I loved the convenience of it and also the super low prices. And if the prices weren't low enough, then I would just wait until one of the stores had a sale, slashing all their prices in half. But at the same time, I was becoming more aware of our impact on the environment. I was cutting my single-use plastic consumption. I was eating less meat and I was walking whenever possible. But I didn't realize that the clothing I was wearing and purchasing was one of the biggest ways I was causing pollution. But I never realized how big of a problem my clothing was causing for the environment. And I wanted to know if I was the only one. So I asked 5 people if I could question and interview them about the impacts of the fast fashion industry on the environment. Here's what we found. How many clothes would you say that you purchase in a month or a year, or if you go on a big shopping spree?
I buy little things here and there, quite a bit, probably maybe 2 shirts a month-ish. I don't ever really go on like big shopping sprees, so just very sporadically when I see something that I want.
I probably purchase anywhere from maybe 3 to 4 garments maybe in a month. I don't buy a lot of clothes. A lot of my clothes I've had for years.
10 to 15 clothing items a year, honestly.
Probably like 2, 3 new pieces a month.
Yeah, I definitely go on like a big spree, so like twice a year on like big sales weekends I'll go and buy just like a ton of clothes, and I literally spend like $150, $200 and just get like new clothes for that like type of season within that year. So
Where do you typically shop? Like your favorite top 3 stores?
H&M, Express, sometimes Old Navy.
yeah, so I shop mostly at Ann Taylor Loft or at The Loft. I love that place.
PacSun, then H&M, and then Urban Outfitters.
Target, TJ Maxx, Loft.
Old Navy and Urban Outfitters, as well as, I don't know, maybe like H&M.
As far as my favorites, I do like the more expensive ones, but I don't buy as much there, like Patagonia or North Face. I'd say those are my favorite. I just don't shop there as often.
Banana Republic is another one, and then Old Navy, and they have like, you know, the big crazy sales like twice a year where it's like 50 to 70% off.
Have you ever shopped to process emotions if you've had a really bad day or a really great day and you need some retail therapy? And if you have done that, why have you done it?
I really don't know. I like to like go into stores and look, but I'm very like intentional in like going and buying. It's very rare that I'll just like go in and buy just because I'm feeling good.
I think sometimes you have to treat yourself, especially if the money's there, why not?
Maybe if something awful happened, I'll use that as an excuse to shop, but typically no. But maybe it's like a death or something like that, then I'm like, I deserve this. I deserve to buy these clothes, you know?
I guess most of the time when I go shopping, it's because I have nothing better to do. If I'm bored and it's a nice day out, I don't want to sit in my apartment, so I'll go to an outlet mall and walk around if none of my friends are available to do anything. I wouldn't say I buy a whole lot when I do that. I could spend a whole day at an outlet mall and maybe come out with a shirt, but I do go around and shop whenever I have nothing better to do in Kansas City.
I have, although I might not be able to quantify it exactly, like what I was doing where. I would say that probably comes out the most with food. That's probably where that happens a lot.
Have you ever shopped because there's a sale going on and you didn't need anything, but there was a sale so you figured you would just check it out? And if you've done that, why?
I like to think I'm not super susceptible to sales, although it depends on what it would be. I think I'm more likely to buy like an item that's on sale over clothes that are on sale. Usually I find that I end up spending too much money on clothes because they're not on sale.
I'll go, but that doesn't really influence what I buy, I'd say. I'm pretty good about just buying things that I actually want.
I typically don't look at sales for the most part. I'm just not as motivated to get clothes just because it's percentage-wise.
Yes. And it's just like so inexpensive. It's hard to like pass it up. And it'll definitely be like, I do it every year for the Old Navy like workout sale. And I just am always like, you can literally get a workout top for $5. Like, why wouldn't you get that? It's never gonna be that cheap any other time of year. Even though I might not need it, the fact that it's like so inexpensive like draws you in and makes you want it.
When I do shop, I typically just look in the sale section,
So if you've done any of those things, you are not alone. According to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, 68% of our economy is from consumer spending. Now, 2/3 of that is from essentials like housing and healthcare, but the remaining 1/3 is on non-durable goods, so clothing. So I want to make something clear because I think that these two words get used interchangeably and they have different meanings. Consumption means acquiring and using goods for a purpose and a need. So we need clothing to meet a basic human function. We need housing and we need food. Consumerism, on the other hand, is our particular relationship to consumption where we purchase goods and clothing to fit our need for self-worth and to demonstrate how worthy we are based on the things that we own. So I was really interested in the aspect of consumerism and how we got there and why we feel like we need to associate ourselves to our things and that gives us a status or a value. So I took a brief history lesson and looked at how consumerism began in the United States. So it started in the Industrial Revolution where we were making, and people were buying, and then we came to this crucial point where we had to ask ourselves, do we continue to make as much as we currently are, and then consumers will just be left to buy all of those things even if we're overproducing? Or do we take a step back and we produce less and we work a little less and they buy a little less? Ford kind of just made the decision for America. In 1914, he decided to double his workers' salary to $5 a day, and he decreased their working hours from 9 to 8. So what he found was that he had lower worker turnover. They were able to have more shifts during the day, so they went from 2 shifts to 3 shifts because people were working less. And he also found that his workers became his consumer base because they could now finally afford the cars that they were producing. And so many other companies saw what Ford was doing and they thought, oh my gosh, yes, if he does it, we can do it, and mass consumerism was set. And there are a couple key ways that we set mass consumerism within America. So first, we went from local mom and pop shops to ubiquitous shopping malls that we see in all of the suburbs, to Targets and Walmarts where we can walk in and pretty much buy whatever we want, to now we have Amazon where I can sit at home and click buy and get however much, whatever I want, whenever I want it. Then we decided that we didn't want to wait for people to get paid. We wanted them to be able to buy right now, right away. So we created credit cards so that people can buy now and pay later. And then we systemized and normalized planned obsolescence, meaning we started to create things that were designed for the dump. So we told people that this new thing is coming out and it's going to be bigger and it's going to be better and you need it right now instead of 6 months from now. And the best way to think of this is the iPhone. The iPhone that just came out is new, but not really. So we are just continually consuming through that process. And finally, through advertisements and other mass media productions, we have been able to associate things with value and worth. So we look at advertisements from big stores like H&M, and there's a bunch of cool people wearing cool clothes doing this really cool thing, and we think, if I just have those clothes, I will have that life, and that will be what I am trying to attain, and I'll get it just through this $5 t-shirt. That is how we set up mass consumerism in the United States, and it's still happening today. It still happens, it still works. H&M and Forever 21, they get daily shipments of new clothing. daily shipments of new clothing. That's insane. Topshop, they introduce 400 new styles of clothing every single week. No wonder we never feel like we can keep up, or we're never trendy enough, because these stores are constantly inundating us with new styles, new trends, new ways to be the coolest we can be, and we'll never reach that or attain that level of trendy. So in 2008, shoppers began lining up outside of Walmart Thanksgiving Day at 5:30 p.m. and by 2 a.m. there were 1,000 people in line. To combat this issue, Walmart decided they were going to take 8 of their biggest men and just put them at the front of the store. One of these men was 480 pounds. He was of Haitian immigrants, and he was actually just a temporary worker in the stockroom, so he wasn't even supposed to be on the floor. When the doors opened, the Black Friday crowd just stampeded in, creating utter chaos within the Walmart. Workers were on the floor, they were climbing atop vending machines, they were just trying to get out of the way. Unfortunately, this one worker was not so lucky. He was hit by the door when it opened and he fell, and the customers continued to walk all over him as they stampeded in for the sales. His cause of death was asphyxia, meaning he was suffocated by the crowds. His sister was quoted saying, "I can't believe they've done this. They just came in and walked all over him." And to make matters worse, another employee was quoted saying, when they, the consumers, were told they needed to leave because an employee had died, they said, "I've been in line since Friday morning and they kept shopping." This is not the only case of this incident happening. Since 2006, 12 deaths have happened due to Black Friday shopping. All I have to ask is, was it really worth it? Was it really worth another human life to get $200 off of your TV? So if we look at an organic cotton t-shirt from Patagonia, we can see that the cotton was taken from Turkey and it was shipped to LA for production. And then from LA, it gets driven up to the distribution center for Patagonia in Reno, Nevada. Patagonia's calculations say that the shirt traveled 7,840 miles and produced about 3.5 pounds of carbon dioxide. And this is a company that is trying to be environmentally conscious. If we think back to H&M and Forever 21 and how they're getting daily shipments of clothing, how much carbon dioxide and how many non-renewable resources are they using for those shipments every single day? Is that $5 t-shirt that you want really worth it? Is it worth the environmental impact that we're creating? Do you know how your clothes are made? And if you do, or if you don't, how do you think that your clothes are made?
Well, I think most of my clothes are made, when I think of it, it's like tiny children in a factory that's like not well insulated, and then it just gets shipped here and they get paid nothing, and I pay like $50 for a sweater.
Well, I want to say my clothes are made through like weaving, like hand weaving or industrial like sewing, but I'm not sure like exactly how they're made. I'm assuming it's a lot of hand labor. I don't want to guess the age of the people doing that though.
I have not looked up how my clothes are made. I would assume in a factory with less than ideal working conditions in another country.
I'm sure this is a cliche answer, but generally in a country where labor is cheap, or where, I'm not saying that all my clothes are made by kids in a sweatshop, but you know, it's a pretty realistic reality. Somewhere where it's really cheap, and yeah, that outsourcing kind of creates all that extra effort to ship it around the world and send it. The global supply chain is, logistically speaking, is great, but environmentally speaking, not so much.
Do you know what materials are used to create your clothing, or do you have an idea of what materials are used to create your clothing?
I think mostly like polyester, acrylic, is that one?
Mainly like cotton. I guess I don't know what else besides cotton and there's some elastic.
Generally, I have an idea of it, you know. For me, it's like whatever feels good, you know. So I'd say yes, but I mean, I couldn't tell you anything that I'm wearing right now.
Cotton, and I know that it's like sheep, llama fur.
I have no idea, honestly. Cotton, probably. Polyester, maybe.
I want to say there's another. Silk?
I don't know. Cotton, polyester, a lot of chemicals, probably plastic is all up in there.
The fashion industry is actually the second biggest polluter in the world, right behind the agricultural industry. It is one of the biggest polluters of clean water, and it produces 10% of global carbon emissions. The jeans you're currently wearing took about 2,000 gallons of water to make. And the industry doesn't just overuse water, which it does to no end, but it also pollutes it. Textile factories use 8,000 chemicals in the dyeing and printing process. Of those 8,000 chemicals, 70 are found to be extremely toxic. And of those 70, 30 cannot be taken from the water once it's been used. Along with this, these factories also pollute the air and other things around them. They are normally in developing countries where the environmental regulations are not really regulated, and it's kind of just a free-for-all for all of these companies. So there's a huge industrial process that goes into creating a t-shirt, and it starts with the cotton gin. It separates the fibers from the seeds and the stems and the leaves. Then the cotton is sent through a machine that turns it into bales, and then it's transported to another location where the bales are undone and the cotton is fluffed and turned into sheets. Then it goes through a carding, combing, drying, and spinning machine, and that all creates a cotton thread. So now we've just created the thread, and now we need to turn it into a fabric. Finally, it will go through a weaving and knitting machine, and that's what actually turns the thread into a fabric for us to then use. All of that, and we're still not done. We're still not even close to having a t-shirt. The fabric has to go through a finishing process, which means it is boiled in an alkali like sodium hydroxide, and then it will remove any impurities that the cotton had within it. Next, we need to dye the fabric because no one wants like an off-white, weird colored cotton t-shirt. So before we can dye it, we actually have to give it a heavy dosing of bleach along with other chemicals like benzene, heavy metals, formaldehyde fixing agents, and then a host of other chemicals. All of this because cotton actually resists dye, so we need to use a lot of chemicals to get the dye to adhere to the cotton. About a third of this though will go into the wastewater as runoff because it's just not sticking to the cotton. And because we want our clothing to be as easily accessible and usable as possible, we just want to throw it in the washing machine and be done with it. It goes through an easy care process, which means it becomes anti-static, moth protectant, fire resistant, odor and stain resistant. To make fabric easy care, they decided to use formaldehyde. Formaldehyde is a chemical that is known for respiratory problems, burning eyes, and cancer. It can also cause an allergic contact dermatitis, which means that when it comes into contact with skin, it can cause an allergic reaction. Other chemicals involved in this process can cause problems with sleep, concentration, memory, and of course, cancer. And to think a little bit broader about this, it's not just about us who are wearing the clothing, but it's also about the people that are making the clothing, the people that live near the wastewater. It is affecting the entire global food chain. If those facts don't make you want to put down a shopping bag, this story from the New York Times might. In a town in Bangladesh, there is a primary school that within 300 yards of it has 2 garment factories, 2 dyeing plants, a textile factory, a pharmaceutical plant, and a brick factory. At least 10 dyeing plants are also found within a slightly larger radius of the school. And then on top of all of these factories, there is an underground drainage channel that then goes through a pipe that leads out right behind the school. So all of the wastewater from all these factories is ending up right behind the school. One of the kids from the school was quoted saying, "The smell is so bad, it's super hard to concentrate, and I sometimes leave school sick." His mom was quoted saying several times that he has said he doesn't want to go to school, he feels like it's super hard to concentrate, he's fainted, and when it's extremely hot, the breeze blows in, the terrible smell, and he has extreme trouble breathing while at school. She said, "I tried to reassure him and tell him that people are holding rallies, but I just don't understand why the pollution can't stop." Most of the factories and the textile mills around the school are exporting goods to the United States and the UK, so we are the direct consumers of these products. And it's not just this one town. Bangladesh's textile and garment factories have been said by experts to be an extreme water pollution problem. What do you do with your clothes when you are tired or done wearing them?
Whenever my clothes were at the point of ending, unless they were like, had like a hole in it or something like really bad. I usually give away my clothes to Helping Hands or whatever, insert charity of choice, whatever's around. But yeah, when it's time for me to get rid of clothes, I usually give them away.
I give them to Goodwill or the thrift shops by my house.
Well, the first place, if it's usable, I would bring it to like Goodwill or another like nonprofit organization. If I ripped it, which is most likely, I would have to throw it away.
I usually take them to Plato's Closet, and then whatever they don't take, I take to Goodwill.
Typically, like if I'm trying to get rid of clothes, I go look for like one of those like donation bins kind of thing, and I just put them all in the trash bin, not in the trash bag, not the bin, trash bag, and then I just throw them all in there, or like give them to a thrift store. Either one. I have just thrown away clothes before, because sometimes you're just like you can't give this to people.
I doubt that anywhere down the chain it's getting disposed of properly. However, when you think about disposing of things properly, a lot of things that we throw away or recycle don't even get disposed of properly in the first place. But how do you properly dispose of rubber shoes, or I don't know. So.
One is that there is no away. So even if you throw something away, it goes somewhere, it stays somewhere, it's never really truly gone. And two, waste is not defined by what it is, it's defined by where it is. It's about context, not content. So if you have a t-shirt hanging in your closet, it's wearable and it's usable, but if it's in the garbage bin, then it's garbage. So it's about where it is, not what it is. Americans discard about 14 billion pounds of clothing each year. That's about 82 pounds per person, and 85% of that ends up in the landfill. And this not only is an environmental problem, it's a cost problem. It's been said that each city spends about $42 per pound of old clothing to get rid of it. So historically we had open air dumps, but they caused an image and rodent problem. So we decided to create a dump where it could go underground. So engineers got creative and they created liners and systems to catch any runoff water. These landfills are created so that it will be isolated from groundwater, it won't come into contact with the air, and it's really so that the garbage won't decompose. And that is what we would call a sanitary landfill. When these conditions are achieved, the garbage doesn't decompose, and that's the main point. So when I said things don't go away, I really mean it. Things don't go away. No matter how sanitary the landfill is, liquid still gets into the chambers. Think rainwater. Synthetic fibers like polyester and lycra can take hundreds of years to biodegrade. Things like leather take 25 to 40 years. Thread can take in between 3 to 5 months, and cotton can take 1 to 5 months. That's a lot of gas emitting products that are just sitting in our landfills. And the problem is when the organic fibers in our clothing that we throw away start to decompose in a landfill, they go through a process called anaerobic digestion. It involves microorganisms that break down organic materials when there's a lack of oxygen. So as trash upon trash upon trash gets piled in, all the air gets squeezed out, and it's the perfect breeding ground for these organisms to come in and start decomposing our clothing. When this happens, the clothing releases what we know as methane gas, which is one of the most notorious greenhouse gases. Beyond the problem of methane, clothing also can contaminate landfills. The dyes and chemicals that are used to create our clothing can build up, and then once they are met with liquid within the chambers, can contaminate groundwater and soils that are near the landfill. The EPA estimates that diverting just clothing from a landfill would be the eco-equivalent of taking 7.3 million cars and their attendant CO2 off of the roads. But this isn't just about consumers. I don't want you to walk away feeling like this is just a you problem or this is just an us problem. This is really a corporate problem. The corporations along the way, this whole process, have been creating environmental impacts, and they continue to choose to do so. For every pound of trash that ends up in a municipal landfill, it's said that the industrial processes create 40 pounds on top of that. How does all of this make you feel? Will you change after hearing any of this?
Like on an individual level, when it comes to like how I consume, like the different products I buy. I like I said, I'm not gonna change. Like I'm still gonna go to show stores and buy what I like. But I think on like a political level and like a legislative level, like I think, and most people agree with this, like I would say that people are like, I myself am absolutely willing to like vote for legislation that fights against these larger companies.
I think it's just very eye-opening in the way that you like now look at clothing. Like I really didn't know anything of what you spoke about, and it's like alarming, all the facts behind it, like the science behind it, what it's doing today. It's not like this is what it will do in the future. It's like this is how we're harming our planet now. And it just goes down to such like a granular level, but it's almost like evil fighting evil, right? It's like the big corporations want money, the people like want new things, and it's like, I feel like it's almost like a cultural shift of like making people aware of what this industry does.
I think that we're in a super critical time, and the flow of information and the spread of information is super fluid.
For the most part, I'll try to be like more conscious of where I'm throwing stuff away and what I'm using it for, or if it's still useful in the household.
It surprised me that it's such a big issue, just because, I mean, I've seen the videos about it, I've seen the working conditions, I've listened to the documentaries about Forever 21 and H&M, and I have changed my shopping habits with those companies because of some of those videos I've watched in the years past. It just sheds a new light on, I guess, how much I buy, and just because I'm buying nicer quality and, you know, more expensive clothing doesn't mean that it's coming from anywhere that's more humane. So I guess I will think twice about that. You know, you hear about all the problems in the environment today.
But I'll try to be more self-conscious and realize some things need to be used more than they should, instead of just being thrown away just because.
Yeah, it feels like there's a long way to the end. This won't be ending anytime soon, nor will companies or, you know, clothes manufacturers be changing their methods anytime soon. So yeah, it's a hard question. Like, is it legislation, or is it just public knowledge, or whatever that is, like the straw that breaks the camel's back that makes all this change go down. But either way, there's a lot of convenience that will need to be sacrificed, and yeah, a lot of. I think that's the biggest thing. It's just people sacrificing convenience and knowing what you're buying.
So I'm sure you're sitting there wondering, how the heck can I make a difference? I'm just one person, I can't do anything. And I totally get that feeling. That's how I felt as well. But let me tell you, there are a couple really simple ways that you can start making a change today. The first way is just buy less. I know that sounds so simple and trivial, but really, if we buy less, then we aren't contributing to the environmental impacts that the fashion industry has on the world. Before you buy something new, ask yourself, do I really need this item? Is this really going to change my life? Is this something that I really, really need or really, really want? If it's not, don't buy it. So to combat the fast fashion industry, here are 3 ways that you can make a sustainable difference when you do have to buy new clothing. 1, you can thrift your clothing. This is such a fun way to find new clothes. You can give a product a new life, and it's probably something that not everyone is wearing. So 2 wins. 2, you can ask to borrow clothing from a friend. If you're going to a really specific event, like a wedding or a business event, you might not need that piece of clothing forever. So maybe ask a friend who has that dress or that suit jacket that you want, and just wear that, and then you don't have to spend money on buying a new piece of clothing. 3, if you really want to buy new and you really can't find anything at the thrift store or from a friend that you want, I highly recommend you looking for sustainable and environmentally friendly clothing stores. There are a ton of amazing stores out there that are doing their best that they can to create less of an environmental impact. I personally love the brand Everlane, but if you ever need to look for a list of sustainable and environmentally friendly companies, there is a company called The Good Trade, and they will give you blogs and lists of so many different places that are doing amazing things. Like I said, this issue is bigger than the consumer. This is on corporations and politicians to change the way that things are done, and not just in America, but around the world. So here are 2 ways that you can really kind of stick it to the man. 1, write. I know it sounds so silly, but write to politicians, write to manufacturers, write to retail companies, write to anyone and everyone, because if we tell them that we are not going to be putting up with this anymore, they're going to have to change eventually. We cannot sit back and let them continue to think that what they are doing is okay. 2, and I think this is the whole point of the video, stop shopping fast fashion. It is so much easier when you don't go to the stores. Do not walk in. Just do a little head nod when you walk by and keep walking. If we don't give them our money, then they can't continue to function. So stop shopping it. Our battle with the textile industry isn't over, but I encourage you to take 1 step today that can make a change.